Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to another volume of the Curtain Call. Today your valiant host will tell tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Thank you, Messenger. I'll take it from here. So the Grey Knight is actually based off a King Arthur 14th century poem written during the alliterative revival. And yeah, it's not the type of text I'd recommend blitzing through an afternoon. Doth I have a competitor to most stressful book to read? So yeah, to no surprise, it has been translated over the years by numerous scholars and academics, some of them including Simon Armitage, Jesse Weston, and yes, even J.R.R. Tolkien. So The Grey Knight has also been adapted into theatre productions, opera productions, a television series in 2002, and a few movies as well. In fact, it was done twice by the same director who clearly had an infatuation with the source material, one of them being the 1984 movie Sword of the Valiant.
With a splendid cast, including legend Peter Cushing, John Rhys Davies, Miles O'Keefe as Sir Gawain, and Sean Connery as the Green Knight.
Now we have this new stylish adaptation from director David Lowery. He's most well known for doing the remake to Pete's Dragon, the last film of Robert Redford's, and A Ghost Story, all of which I've been told are worth checking out. So yeah, this is my first David Lowery film, which I was actually looking forward to. I'm a bit of a sucker for fantasy films. I did have an interest in King Arthur lore. Yes, that includes watching the BBC television series Merlin. I must stress, I was 10, 11 years old. I knew no better. And from the trailers alone, I thought it looked visually interesting. So this adaptation does take a few liberties with the original source material. Oh, I can see the hardcore Camelot fans sharpening their pitchforks right now. But hold your horses, let me explain. So in this interpretation, Gawain is not an official knight of the Round Table yet. He's actually the young nephew of King Arthur and is the son of the enchantress Morgan Le Fay. He's of noble blood, but he's very far from being the legend of the Round Table. He drinks, he sleeps around, and he's overall lost in direction. So in this interpretation of Camelot, it's run by an elderly, kind of on his last legs, King Arthur. He's already made a name for himself and is looking to find an heir to the throne. So he invites Gawain to a Christmas Eve celebration at the Round Table Chambers. He only asks that he tell a tale of himself so he may know thee. I mean, he actually says that, I might know thee. Unfortunately, Gawain has really nothing to say because he hasn't had the experience of a great knight or a noble warrior yet. But he sees potential in Gawain. Interrupting their holiday celebrations, the Grey Knight bursts into the court of the Round Table on horseback, armed with an axe, and challenges them to a Christmas game. He asks the boldest of blood and the wildest of heart to face him in combat. There is a catch, however. If Arthur's knight wins, they will be gifted with the axe, but then must face the Green Knight again next Christmas to the north of the Green Chapel. So you can guess who puts up his hand. To prove his worth as a knight, the noblest of all professions, Gawain takes the challenge. So it's spoiler alert, but I mean it's based on a centuries old text, so no excuses. Gawain wins and the Green Knight is beheaded. The knight picks up his head and Gawain must now keep to his word in a year to receive the same fate. So a year he waits, seemingly doing jack to change his behaviour or circumstances. Well, I mean, we don't really get to see what he gets up to in this waiting period. We just have to assume that time flies really quickly, but we don't really see anything where Gawain has changed as a person. He's still stuck in his habits. Arthur sort of steps in and reminds him, yeah, by the way, promise is a promise, mate. Go and get your head cut off. King of the people, everyone. He states that this is the fate of a knight. He does not know of any man who was not matched with great death before his time. Gawain accepts his fate and goes off on his journey to find the Green Chapel. He's awarded with a shield blessed in holy water and a green sash with magical properties that is meant to protect him from harm. So off he goes on his long quest to find the Green. So fans of the original novel already noticed there are differences between the original text and the film. Interestingly, David Lowery has actually talked about this in an introduction to one of the new additions to one of the translations of The Grey Knight. he states that he started rereading the original text, but actually started writing the screenplay before he had finished it. He claims that this might have been a mistake, and that's why the ultimate film becomes more linear and more of a literal journey than the actual original source material provides. This is actually really interesting because I find for the most part the changes are to the benefit of the story and definitely of the film. For example, to make King Arthur old and frail is a great idea because it justifies why Arthur wouldn't put himself out there to fight the Grey Knight himself, and creates the whole dynamic that he's almost on his last legs and that Gawain could fill in his position if he decides to pursue greatness. Just makes him more of also an ancient presence in the film. He has very brief scenes, but he just feels like he's been around for ages. Really solidifies his status as a legendary ruler of England. I'm also a fan of revealing the big twist of the original poem pretty early on, even before the Grey Knight comes into the picture. It gives the Christmas game a lot more logical sense and a lot more context in regards to assisting Gawain's journey. Also, not surprising, the film adaptation decides to expand more on what Sir Gawain encounters on his journey towards the Green Chapel. Additional encounters along his journey may not be the most innovative. You know, the ghost story, the bandits on the road story. I mean, what's next? Bumping into the anarcho-syndicalist commune? Help! Help! I'm being repressed! But for the most part, I think they're handled very nicely. It is arguable there could have been more effort put into building up the universe in Grey Knight. We don't really get to meet a lot of other characters, but since this is Gawain's story, they delve enough into the world to support his ultimate journey. However, I do think Larry did screw up on one section of the film. The part Larry sort of screws up on in his interpretation is the whole Lord and Lady sequence. And yes, I get it, it's his interpretation, but leaving this scene in clearly has some significance to the story, and it just doesn't quite make sense in the context of the film. To explain my point, I'm going to have to briefly go into spoiler territory. In the original poem, Gawain is on a journey to the Green Chapel. He finds himself at a mysterious manor where he is greeted by the Lord. The Lord claims that the Green Chapel is very close and that he should take his time to rest. Upon his stay, the Lord brings Gawain a test of endurance. He will provide him a place to rest, but the Lord must go on his morning hunting trips while he leaves him in the care of his beautiful wife. The Lord only asks that when he comes back from his hunting trips, Sir Gawain give him everything he gains during the day in the castle for the reward of whatever the Lord catches that day. Sir Gawain accepts. Over the 3 days, the lady seduces him, yet Gawain's able to control his inhibitions, only ever landing a kiss. Following his promise, he delivers said kiss to the Lord in exchange. The Lord does not question this, and they continue over the 3 days. Eventually, the lady's third attempt, she offers a green sash with the promise of full protection from any bodily harm. He gives in, accepting the sash, and receives 3 kisses. The lady asks that she not tell her husband of this, however, and upon leaving the castle, he meets the Lord, gives him the 3 kisses, but doesn't say anything about the sash. As a result, this impacts the Grey Knight's game as Sir Gawain goes in with a level of dishonesty with the protection that he has from the magical sash. Film, however, sort of butchers this whole section. For example, the Lord only discusses the agreements pretty far into the whole sequence, and there's only one moment where the lady tries to seduce him, and he comes over it too. He literally ejaculates. Alright, that's it, mate, you know the rules, time to give a handy to the Lord. So it never really feels like Sir Gawain is being tempted. This would have been especially interesting considering they cast Alicia Vikander as both the lady and also Sir Gawain's girlfriend back in Camelot. But yeah, they don't really do anything with this idea, and it just comes off as just an awkward use of an actress. Also introducing the green sash early into the film as he's gifted it by Morgan Le Fay, his mum. I just feel this whole sequence was mishandled and doesn't quite have the impact it had in the original story. I understand it's an interpretation, I'm totally fine to change things, but as a result, I really feel this moment suffers. I actually really liked The Grey Knight. I thought it was a really good fantasy film. It's a respectful and stylish take on the Arthurian legend, even if it's not technically an Arthurian story, it's more of a spin-off on one of his knights. Clearly made by someone who adores their fantasy. Interestingly, he's cited influences such as Willow, Excalibur, the Dark Crystal, Bram Stoker's Dracula of all influences. Yes, even film masterpieces such as Passion of the Joan of Arc, when it comes to the close-ups that he uses on some of the characters. The production design in this film is phenomenal and it really breathes life into the world. The costume designs are great. I find it an interesting artistic choice not to name any of the famous Arthurian characters. You know, instead of Arthur, Merlin, Morgan, they're just known as King, Magician, and Mother. The knight is a total prosthetic creation, there's no CGI involved. It's a wonderful take on the ancient warrior, which to me is kind of a mixture between an Ent from Lord of the Rings and the Gnome King from Return to Oz. A recommended film, by the way, if you've never seen it. Some may find taking the more fantastical approach to the Grey Knight may be a disservice to the original tale, but I think it is a necessary way to adapt the tale for modern audiences. The CGI is probably the only time in the film I felt like the effects faltered a bit. The giants, while stunning to behold in just their grand size, do look a bit uncanny valley, and the fox, especially when he's talking. Chaos reigns. Oh, sorry, wrong fox. Does look a bit cartoony. To my surprise, however, they actually used matte paintings in this film, which I didn't even notice. It's a really good looking film, no denying that. Even naysayers of the film can't deny that. The locations in Ireland are gorgeous to look at. There's so many memorable shots in this film. The shot of Gawain waiting for the Grey Knight to wake from his slumber, my god, that's a beautiful looking shot. There's one where the camera gets turned upside down following Gawain and the fox going north. It's very reminiscent of that shot in Midsommar. It's not as well done, and I'm not sure it adds much to the events on screen, but it's an intriguing take on that sequence. I think you can say that about the whole film. It's quite an intriguing film. I was gripped throughout, ignoring certain issues in regards to the adaptation from the novel. I always felt invested in Gawain's story. Acting was solid, especially for a King Arthur film adaptation, which, let's face it, doesn't really have a great track record. Don't really fault The Grey Knight. It's a very good fantasy film. As I said, I will say fans of the original text may be left a little pissed off about the whole lord and lady sequence. The rest of it, however, I think is a really good fantasy film. The more I think about it, the more I appreciate the film, and I'll definitely want to see it again in the near future. I know the release of The Grey Knight is a bit iffy at the moment. It's available on some streaming networks, but I know that in England it has been delayed due to the Delta. So if you're not able to watch it yet, please be patient. Do wait for you to see it. It would be best to watch it in the cinema. I unfortunately couldn't see it in the cinema. But if you do get the option, definitely do. It's that kind of movie to watch. Otherwise, yeah, giving it a stream as well on a nice big television, definitely worth checking out. And I will see you guys on the next episode.